questions. Does that mean you really, really want lunch?
While we're waiting for questions, hang on. I just want to mention, I totally forgot it in my talk. It's in there. New Media Ventures is here. Thank you, Shannon, for the tweets. New Media Ventures is an impact-oriented angel fund, and it actually launched here at PDF, as you might recall, a long time ago. So they were investors in us. And we were, I think, their first exit. And the next company to exit was one in which we were also involved, CrowdTangle. So many thanks to PDF for, I tell people, you should come to PDF if you want to know what the future is going to be, right? If you want to know what's going to happen next, you need to be at PDF.
Yeah,
so I just want to give a shout out.
That's the part we forgot, I think, is getting the stock too. Yes, a question here.
Hi, it's Sahar again. Work? Okay, cool. Cheeky question and a real question. The cheeky question is, Juliana, you said that you were inspired by what we were doing in the United States. Why? The real question is, I guess for the other two of you, which is, one thing that I've seen people grapple with is, how do you have good customers, like have enough customers to be a sustainable business, but have ones that don't not fit your values? And I imagine that there are like specific ways that you might have solved this in your lives, but as a general framework, do you have advice for others in squaring that circle?
I'll answer, and then I'm sure you have a lot to say on that. But did you have it? Yeah, did you want to go first?
Yeah. So I think you make it as a joke, but honestly, and I have this debate with all my friends from developed world, that you guys are spoiled. And I'm sorry to say this, but you have such an amount of academical resources, financial resources, and we just saw Ben talk. We started our first campaign with a grant of $20,000 for a year that we couldn't spend in peace because it was political. So really, what I'm saying is that you guys have all the resources to experiment 70 times a week. I was like wishing we could really run those experiments, and I was like dreaming with all the things that we will like find out with the data that we have. But you guys have human resources. You have this type of gatherings. You have a community. You have safety. In Colombia, 500 leaders have been killed since the peace agreement was signed. And leaders like all of you that work here in the US, and like the biggest problems is how to tackle fake news. In our world, our biggest challenge right now is how to keep them safe. And actually that's where we're focusing like the tech development right now. So honestly, you guys have learned a lot. You have developed a lot of technologies. You have developed a lot of campaigns. You have data. You have books about this. And of course, that gives a lot of inspiration to us. We learn a lot from it. It just doesn't mean that we can copy paste it and apply in the global south. So it's a big investment, and it's also a big opportunity for us to be here, and we're really humbled. But don't forget how lucky you guys are, really.
No, I was so inspired by your talk, Juliana. So I'm glad something good is happening somewhere. But to your question, how do you, find, clients and customers, who vibe with the positive work you're trying to do? To a certain extent, some of it is self-selecting, right? Like people, especially if it's a high-end product like we had with Attentively, to a certain extent, people see our backgrounds, they see the language that we have on the site, and to a certain extent, they understand, who they're about to do business with. The same with Do Big Things. People, the NRA is not going to seek us out, right? Like they know that one of our clients is Everytown for gun safety, and we're taken, all right? So, to a certain extent, I think that, I keep saying that, I think that it's self-selecting in part.
Yeah, and I just say, I think the saying no to clients or anything you do is the single most important decision you will make. And so this is, for us, on the revenue side of things, a lot of people wanted us to transition slowly from an advertising model. There's a lot of people that still wanted to pay money, and like literally saying no definitively was the most important orientation. And I think if you end up having clients, you can't find clients that are fully aligned, like I would consider a different business.
Time for one more question.
Any other questions? No more?
Going once.
Going once.
Ah, we got one here.
Question. Running. Sorry.
I guess it's a question. Anyway, I'm very curious about, say, how do you think the future of governance or government will look like if it's focused on this, if it comes from the States? I'm very afraid of that. Say I'm from Venezuela, and I find it very exciting that I'm going back today, back to a dictatorship, because I think the future of governance is going to happen in emerging markets. I think it's going to happen in those kind of places that are very challenging. I mean, we had 30 million people all across the world that want change. Who else got that? So I'm very curious about how you see a future of governance coming from the States in the innovation environment, and how will you see a future of governance coming from elsewhere?
Well, my answer to that is, we live in a global economy. No matter what certain people in Washington believe, when GDPR happened in Europe, all of the big players, all the big five, Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, et cetera, Facebook, they all had to change because you can't have one version of Instagram here and another in Europe. So I think that the pressure that's coming from emerging economies, growing political bases, like Venezuela, are going to put pressure on these companies, whether they like it or not. Another great example is Kenya. I don't know if folks have seen, but Kenya actually created this amazing blueprint of, here are the new rules around what you can say, in the political environment in social media. And you read that and you think, wow, what if that were happening here? This would be great, and this would solve a lot of problems in terms of fake news, hatred, et cetera. So I think that you're right, that governance is going to come potentially from other places, but will be internationalized.
To
Last
me,
word.
I feel that exactly because of technology and also international politics, the boundaries are not that clear and we are completely interconnected. And I feel that's why it's so important to have these spaces in which we connect and exchange experiences. And I'm immediately thinking of how big the influence of like the US is in our countries, in Colombia or Venezuela, and how really the government that you guys hear is so important to us because it really has an impact on our internal policies. So I feel that in two ways, because of like the political interconnections, but also because of like the resources that we have. I don't feel that we'll be able to alone do all the innovations in the global south. And that's how I feel that like combining the experience and working together on challenges it's so important. But I definitely feel that the future of governments is still very far from just being purely tech. And that's why we should also combine like all the technology with the basic like organizing and grassroots and collaborations.